Hello everyone and welcome along to a slightly earlier than planned edition of the Sunday Night TII podcast. My name is Craig Dennett and I'm joined by Tommy McIntyre and Ian Mitchell, fresh off the news, or I guess it's still reports at this stage, that Rangers have sacked Philippe Clement. Fairly strong reports that that the Belgian manager has left Ibrox tonight, hot on the heels of Rangers 2-0 defeat to St Mirren yesterday afternoon. We will continue. We're still waiting on the official club announcement coming through. They like an announcement bang on the hour, so I'd imagine a 7 o'clock announcement might well be coming our way, but we'll keep you updated as we go. I think a lot of Rangers fans seem to be happy that this has happened. Hugo Bear saying a very good evening to everyone. Ian, just first of all to yourself, can I get your immediate reaction to the news?
In a funny way, I'm actually quite surprised. I just sort of resigned myself to the fact that he would be here until the summer, regardless of what happened on the pitch. I thought that before yesterday, and then obviously at the game, it was again toxic. It was again empty, especially towards the end. There were very few people still kicking about. So I don't know if that's maybe sort of finally put the nail in the coffin sort of thing, but I don't think any of us deep down should be surprised in terms of this has been coming for a hell of a long time at this point. Clement's had a terrible year. If you go back to this time last year, things were looking pretty rosy, and then suddenly it's just went downhill. And then we've seen sort of calamity after calamity, bad record broken after record. Again, another one yesterday in terms of how long St Mirren hadn't won at Ibrox. So I think overall I'm pretty happy this is finally over and we can begin to move on. Obviously it raises a lot of questions about where we go here. If it's something short term, if we look at a longer term option straight away, there's plenty to talk about, thankfully. But overall, I'm really, I was going to say happy, but it's quite sad because I don't think Clement is a bad guy. I just don't think he quite understood what we were looking for and what Rangers needs in a manager sort of thing. It was a lot of the same errors back and forth, a lot of the same problems that 50,000 of us in the stand can see, and yet the one guy who matters can't see. So finally away, and just hopefully we can go into something a bit fresher, something new, because it's well overdue.
Yeah, Tommy, some of the reactions coming in. Duden saying best day of the year. John Bryan's best news I've heard all weekend. They should have gone months ago. Boyd Craig, terrible manager. Hugo Bear, it became too bad. Emotions are obviously pretty high at this stage amongst all Rangers fans. But what's your reaction to the news?
Well, I think yourself, the people in the comments, and Ian there have summed it up pretty well. Listen, nobody ever wants to start with a Rangers manager getting sacked because that means the club's not doing well. Nobody ever wants that. Philippe Clement came in with a decent reputation. You know, he'd won things in Belgium. He'd been at Monaco, it hadn't quite worked. And yeah, if you take a step back, you go, right, the way the club hasn't been optimal for him either, right? There's been some turbulence behind the scenes, but ultimately he's a subject to, could you do the basics? And the basics are beating the likes of Queen's Park and beating the likes of St Mirren here. And that's what's ultimately got, you know, Philippe Clement. I think if the fans could have seen quite clear progression in the style of football, they could have seen us beating these teams regularly and maybe just falling at some of the bigger hurdles every now and again, but still seeing a little bit of progress in Europe. We could have maybe got round the manager and said, okay, keep progressing here and there'll be new investment, etc. But all of those wheels came off. Yeah, I know we're still in Europe, but it got to a stage whereby not even that was enough to support. Just seeing you sneezing there, Craig. Right, that's your violent.
Caught by surprise, yeah. Caught by surprise.
That's your violent reaction to the club news. But yeah, I mean, all those things. At the end of the day, if he could have just have said, "Look at what I'm doing here is the basics," that would have got him over the line. But nobody could see any progression, and ultimately, you go back to back and you go Queen's Park, St Mirren. The players evidently didn't have a clue. They weren't naturally fighting for the jersey. Nobody could work the style of play. Nobody wanted to be there watching it. Nobody was going with them. We went through anger into apathy. At that point in time, the board need to say, right, stability is one thing. Driving us into another car crash is completely another. Best of luck, Philippe, but you're no longer the Rangers manager.
Yeah, Philippe Clement's been in charge of Rangers since October 2023. One League Cup trophy to his name over that time. It does appear that the pressure after Queen's Park and St Mirren became too much, and the board have listened on that occasion. Iain, I think you were right in terms of saying that you felt surprised. I think we all were, especially after what's happened over the last week.
Yep.
Quant was sacked. Just kind of expected them to limp along until the end of the season, awaiting news of sort of the outcome of the takeover piece and where that lands and everything around those. I have to say, Ross and I spoke about it in the post-match press conference yesterday, but in his post-match press conference, he was very much a different Philippe Clement. He wasn't as bullish as he normally. He wasn't as combative as he normally is, and he wasn't as forthright. If he did look like a defeated man in that moment, and it was a different type of Philippe Clement where you could tell he just knew it was the end. Are you surprised it took this long, Iain?
I mean, we've all been on here for a good few months now saying he should have went after X game, this game, the other game, but I guess the European factor was obviously key to this, and that's what the interview last week was talking about. Like he has done well in Europe. That is the kind of saving grace to all this, and that is where most of our finances came from. So I get the board's point of view from, well, if we want to progress in Europe, which is kind of the only thing left at that point last week, it would make sense to keep him. But just being at the game, you guys summed up really well in the post-match yesterday. It felt like a chore going to Ibrox yesterday. Not even before the game started, it felt like, okay, here we go again. Obviously, you see the Celtic result. I don't think any of us really took much from that. Like, no one thought we were back in anything at all. But we always had that thing in our mind where, well, when Celtic drop points early, we then don't capitalise. Again, it wouldn't really matter. Yes, I don't think if we won yesterday, we're back in anything, as I say. But that game itself was simply boring. It was a match that I didn't want to sit and watch. It was one that I basically stayed till the end because of this podcast was on. I didn't want to miss anything. If I wasn't on this tonight, I would have been leaving early, like most of the stadium was.
And now you don't even need to talk about the game.
Waste of time. But
I think that's called gallows humour there, guys, to be honest with you. Right, okay.
No, but you're spot on. It has took longer than it should have because there's so many results and moments in this last maybe 3-4 months especially where he could have went and no one would have really bat an eyelid. And I think it's strange that as a Rangers support, we're always very different opinions everywhere. No one's really sure what the right thing to do is when it comes to managers, players, tactics, anything like this. But unanimously across the board, I couldn't find a single Rangers fan who would want to keep Clement at this point. So when a Rangers fan base is so unanimous, I think it only had to go one way. And yes, it's longer than expected, but we are finally there at least.
Just playing devil's advocate into that, right? And won't win me much friends, or many friends, I should say. But just play that back for the board's perspective. I agree with you, Iain, right? We all know he had to go, right? But and even in the board meeting early this afternoon, when the decision was made, there was still a lot of good feeling for Philippe Clement and a lot of sympathy and understanding for what he'd faced into. But a realism had set in that the fan base had now completely moved out of view, and he wasn't getting the answers, didn't have the answers, right? But as you're changing chairman, chief executive, etc., changing a manager as well, probably not the optimals. You lose them all. So yeah, you look at it and you go, the board tried to say, and you've got various different views of that, I suppose, would be the way to state it. In that, Philippe Clement had tried to do his best for the club, but it's just not worked.
Yeah, Tommy, just on that, I guess, what do you think changed between the Queen's Park defeat and the St Mirren defeat?
Just a realism, I would imagine. It's one thing to say when you get an aberration. Any team can get a howler of a result, even against lower league opposition. It happens, right? But then you back it up again, and you say, "Am I getting anything for this squad? Do they look like they're playing for the manager? Is the fan base, trying to get behind them? Do they believe that he can turn it around?" At a point in time, the Bulldogs will need to look at season ticket renewals coming up, and you go, right, what's the best decision here? And if your manager turns into a lame duck, which I think it's probably fair to say Philippe Clement had turned into, then yeah, that's it. Back-to-back stuff. If you get the worst result, the Queen's Park one, then you say, right, you go on a run of 5, 6, 7, 8 victories, whatever, right? All right, we can see something here. But it's not happened. I mean, nobody can turn around and say even the Hearts game was electric or anything like that. We're dragging ourselves over the line game to game. And at some point, you need to say, right, that's enough of that. You're not, and more importantly, in the wider context of Rangers, you're not the man for the future because there's so much else going on in the background. So it's a scene-setting thing as well, isn't it?
No, I think also due to that though, obviously the Queen's Park game, we were the better team. You know, their keeper had an incredible game. We hit the post, all this kind of stuff. Yesterday was not like that. St Mirren were better than us yesterday. They had more chances, more shots, more attacks. The players just looked like they chucked it, to be honest. So I think that's a key difference. Obviously, the both results are terrible, and the Queen's Park one's an absolute disaster. But that's a little different for me.
Yeah, I was going to ask you. Do you think, having been at the game yesterday, do you think the stands were pretty much empty at 70 minutes?
Yeah,
I don't think I've ever seen Ibrox like that, to be honest. Do you think that had a big impact on how the board has viewed things and just said the fans are clearly giving up way beyond anything I've seen before, I think, to be honest, and enough's enough?
I think so, because like I said before, the players look like they've started to give up, which is a problem, but when the fans start to give up, like that's a disaster for a football club of our size who rely on the fans, who rely on that season ticket money, rely on ticket sales, shirt sales. If this continued, people would have just stopped going. And I know it doesn't have an immediate monetary effect because season tickets are paid for, it's all locked in, but it's a terrible look, and it's not going to help the players, it's not going to help anyone having no fans there, and it just adds that negativity around the club, which we've had for too long. So you're spot on. About 75 minutes yesterday, it's just empty stand after stand. It was just quite really sad, to be honest. It's just not what you grew up seeing for Rangers, so maybe it is the final sort of nail in that coffin again. I go back to just the board saying, right, this is enough now.
I should say, well, I don't think it'd be funny for most people, but given everybody's contacts, etc., are saying that the board meeting had happened and he's been sacked and just waiting the announcement, it's been reported in various different outlets as well. Rangers come out and say we've extended his deal. it's a fact here. Maybe look out for that.
Well, Tommy, Rangers did extend his deal in the summer. I mean, and they were clearly backing him. I guess trying to get out of that cycle of sacking a manager every October and going round in that circle time and time again. But they did have enough confidence in him and think they saw enough in him to reach that point. So I was just keeping an eye on my phone to see what was coming through.
You can see the eyes going down every 2 seconds.
It was Sky Sports. Sky Sports just saying what everyone else has said so far. So that's absolutely fine. But the board obviously wanted to back him and wanted to give him every possible opportunity. It clearly hasn't worked this time. Do you think that means it's the wrong strategy or it's just the wrong guy?
Depends if you think just offering somebody an extension is a strategy or not. I mean, I don't necessarily think it is, although I get your point. Remember as well, different kind of set up with the board, different chief exec and stuff like that as well at that point in time. I don't think you would naturally see that again for a manager who was probably still a question mark was over him. And then it came out, it's that being the backing. Did it really have to be a 3-year extension? So no, I don't think that was naturally the right move. They were trying to solidify his position in terms of this wider project that keeps getting talked about. But then you find yourselves, and I don't inherently know the details of what's inside the contract, obviously, but then you get yourself to a position that, right, you're going to have to pay compensation. Right, we're already paying compensation for previous managers. And so extending that without having made sure that the club was protected if results weren't to go our way would have been an even more egregious error. But no, I don't think it was the right move at the time. Rangers obviously felt that they could, one, give solidity and confidence to the fan base, take away any noise, and they thought they were protecting a managerial asset who would go on to succeed and then be tapped up by other clubs. It has not worked in and of itself, but that's just down to the manager and the players. Let's not walk past the players here in any way, shape, or form.
Iain, we know that this season has been a disaster, I think, apart from maybe Europe where he can get some pass marks. But in terms of his tenure overall since October 2023, how do you think it will be viewed once the dust is settled?
It's a very hard question because those first 4 or 5 months were very successful. Went a really good win and run, won a trophy. Things looked very positive for a change, and we all thought, okay, this is the right guy. He's won titles before. he should know how to see this out and take us forward. But like I said right at the start, the last sort of 12 months or so have just been an absolute riot from start to finish. Obviously, talk about Europa League this year, which was good, but the Champions League knockout was a disaster. Like we should have won that tie. They obviously went on to be one of the worst teams in the Champions League, so that says a lot. The amount of money we lost out from that alone was a disaster. So that's the European side of it, sort of 50-50, but domestically it's just been a mess. Not only like result-wise and position league-wise, but as we're touching on it, it's an absolute chore to go to Ibrox now. And it's because you're just watching the same rubbish week in, week out. And I put that tweet out last night with the Neil McCann comments, and just how negative we play, how regressive we are, and just not good to watch. That's been the case for about the last 12 months now. Just players within themselves, no confidence in the club, just not what we expect from a Rangers team. And these are guys who have a good performance in them, which just makes it all the more confusing. Like, again, like Tommy says, we can't pin everything on Clement. This is very much a player mentality problem as well, I think, because the players can raise it in certain moments. The big games, we went toe-to-toe with Spurs and Man United recently and didn't look out of place, yet the last few home results would paint a totally different picture of what this team is. So there's so much problems beyond Clement that it's not just a case of, well, Clement's gone now, so good times are coming back. Like, there is so much work to do at this club, literally top to bottom, and it's just a bit not worrying just now, because I'm glad he's sacked, of course, but it's worrying in terms of we really need to start making the right decisions at every single level, and you don't have the faith that certain parts of the club are going to be successful. So it's a scary time, it's a strange time, but hopefully it's the start of something positive anyway.
Tommy, we're focusing a lot on Philippe Clement at this moment in time, but the Catalyst says players looked as if they had down tools. Do you think they had, or do you think it's just actually the style, the tactics, the everything else that went along with it was the issue, and the players were struggling to perform in that structure?
A combination, and I know that's a bit of a, could be seen as a wishy-washy answer. It's not meant to be in that. I don't think the style of play was helping them. I think there's players in there that evidently, self-evidently, aren't good enough, and we're starting to hide. I think Ian's referenced it there. That breakdown by Neil McCann showed that level of, you could talk about systems and all that, but players just spotting a pass and being proactive and being confident to go and play it forward. I mean, that's kind of inbuilt. So I think the players do need to have a look at themselves. I also think anybody who watched the St Mirren game and watched the Queen's Park game couldn't tell me that team was performing absolutely at their optimal level for the manager. You know what I mean? It's different for getting up for a game under the lights on a Thursday night at Ibrox when it's jumping. Queen's Park coming, they played it it was walking football for a long period until they went, oh, we might actually get a shoe in the press here because they're about to put us out. Better try something. And then, St Mirren, what's going to happen. St Mirren set up a really good way. We've played them away. They gave us a really, really tough game. And then, your manager's under pressure. It's in front of your home fans, and you get that level of performance. I mean, there is only so much the manager can do in terms of style and coaching, etc. But then he sends them out across the white line, and they need to go and beat their man, be brave on the ball, etc. Not all of that's in the manager's gift, right? So yes, you rightly have a go at Philippe Clement, absolutely 100%. But none of those players should get any pass marks for what has happened this season and led us to this point where a manager gets the bullet. Rangers are in disarray, and we are staring at a domestic season come back end of February. It was before that, obviously, where there's nothing to play for other than let's just make sure we get second place in the league.
Yeah, I think Ross and I spoke about it a bit on the post-match reaction last night after the game. I just think we never played with any tempo, we never played with any pace, we never played with any intent. Really, we struggled all season long trying to create chances, struggled even more trying to take chances. When teams were coming in and sitting with 10 men behind the ball, we were playing so slowly that I could have probably kept up with the pace of play.
Hold on here, right? I mean, that's hyperbole, surely, right?
But we would also seem like we were playing slowly, but then we try and rush things, which would then see that nothing would work out in the final third. Whereas then when actually it got to the stage where you should rush things and you should pick up the pace, such as counter-attacks and all that sort of stuff, we would slow the ball down, we'd slow the game down, we'd let the opposition get back into their structure and then try and break them down again with the same tempo. It just at no point did it ever seem like it was working. He maybe just about figured out how to play Celtic in the last 2 games that we played against them, but it was nowhere near enough, and it was nowhere near quick enough either, in my eyes. But I guess now we're looking ahead at what next. There's been a lot of news this week. There's been a lot of discussion about the takeover, the impact that has on decisions that have been made at the club at the moment, and the impact that's been having on decisions that have been made at the club since talk started before Christmas. But if we look just at the managerial position, Iain, the consensus that I've seen so far seems to be you get interim to the end of the season, and then you make your actual appointment in the summer. Is that how you see it?
I think it has to be. I think it would be absolute madness, but also quite Rangersy to bring in someone long term just now when you've got a sort of rumours of the board changing completely, that absolute overhaul that could bring. Like, the board could come in and not want the guy who is in the manager's chair at that moment. That's just a very real possibility that happens. Given the fact this season is pretty much done, I know we've got Europe sitting there, but that could be over in a couple of games. So given the fact the domestic season at least is done, I think you just give it to someone who sort of knows the club, sort of safe pair of hands. I don't know exactly who that is, if it's a Stephen Davis, a Kevin Thompson kind of thing, just to basically get you through to the summer, because I don't want to bring in someone externally, like fully brand new to the club, who then might do well, might have a good few months, and we all start to think, okay, is this the right guy? And then suddenly it's a problem of whether I have to back him fully and keep him in place long term, or else that's something we've done before, obviously, or else go for brand new, and then you're going to be comparing the two. So I think it's a bit of a lose-lose here, because, like I say, Kevin Thompson, for example, could come in and win every game 5-0, and it's the same problem. I get that. But I think the new board, as we're expecting it to be, have to be the ones who make that long-term appointment. It's just an absolute tap-in. It has to be. But whether it will be is not going to also fear, because there could be a guy who the new board, old board, whatever it is, want that's available right now, and do you bring them in to sort of start laying foundations and get a grip of the squad, who they want to keep, who they don't. But for me, it's interim now, 4 months, and then you make that appointment in the summer, give them a full pre-season, give them a transfer window, let them imprint their own style, because as we touched on, there's a lot of players in this club who we need to get rid of, and we need to just get out the door. And that, for me, is going to be a massive job at the start of that summer. And you've got that balance of getting them out to bring new guys in, and still you've got a Champions League game that's around the corner. So there's a lot to be done, but I'm hoping we're doing it structured and properly for once.
There's some absolutely awful suggestions for next manager coming in the comments as we go through them.
I saw somebody saying Martindale.
Yeah, Derek McInnes, David Martindale,
Get it.
Sean Dyche. Who else we got in here? Stuart Kettlewell. Someone saying get Alex Ray out the door. I think that's closer to rather than being next manager. But yes, I think people are clutching at straws a bit now, because they don't know who they want to be the manager, and they don't know who it could be. Tommy, how much does, and the answer to this is quite obvious, I guess, but keen for you to expand on your view on it.
I always like an easy question, mate. You feel free.
How, especially from this moment now, where it seems like a takeover is potentially well down the line, although not anywhere near signed on the dotted line, but potentially well down the line. So how much does that factor into the decision making that the board will go on from here? How much will that factor into today's decision to get rid of Philippe Clement? How much will that, I guess, how much will they take into account the views of the potential new owners, new investors into what's going on at the club at the moment?
It's an interesting one, that. So if you say, let's say the deal's 85, 90% done or whatever, right? But it's not signed and sealed yet, because obviously any new investors, if they take the 51%, they'll put guys on the board, or people on the board, I should say, and then they'll be driving decision making, right? It would make no sense to me if you feel that you are about to be taken over and there'll be a new management structure, etc., and you've got the ongoing elements of the review that Patrick Stuart had spoken about, and by the way, the people doing the review of Sportsology have links to the 49ers group and stuff like that. I don't think it's particularly surprising that those were that was the group that was picked to do the review, right? But if you've got all that in the mix and you've got a situation whereby, you've got an outside chance of something in Europe, outside, very much on the margins, right? But you've totally blown it domestically. But you'll probably be able to trundle over the line and guarantee yourself second tier, right? You don't really need to immediately grasp for a permanent manager, right? Because you're not absolutely fighting for something domestically. Now, it'd be different if it was, a tight title challenge or whatever, and something else had happened. So the club could take a reflective moment to say, right, well, we don't need to move fast here. What we can say is interim, get us over the line. With this squad of players, we should be able to drag ourselves over the line, right? It's simple as that. And that's it. We'll see what happens with the takeover. The takeover group will be involved in the decision-making for the new manager. Those two conversations can happen in parallel, right? You don't need to be saying, we can't talk about it until such time as the takeover's happened. They can be having that discussion. Who's the person that we want? Draw up that list, fill them out, whilst you put an interim in place and then go for it. What you don't want to do is, to the point you're making, is firing a permanent manager now with expectations, gets to the end of the season, and then the takeover does happen, and they come in and go, by the way, this is not who we want. And then their first act is to then sack a manager who may or may not be doing something right. So you might as well just wait and then see. I think there's nothing wrong with going for an interim right now, between now and the end of the season. I mean, it's February, almost March. Let the structure look after itself and run for it. It's not as if we're in danger of anything at the moment.
Yeah. Ian, I was just about to go into names, and I've just seen, I'm trying to work out the reputability of this person online, but he is a reporter for Reuters and Eurosport, so kind of suggests it might be potentially true. He said Rangers board moved quickly to appoint new manager, with Steven Gerrard preferred by the board and in talks. Also concurrent discussions with ex-Everton manager Sean Dyche, more to follow. I'd be surprised if they were going to go down. We've just spoken about the potential for an interim manager. I'd be surprised if either of those names were even interested in an interim shot at it, to be honest.
Sorry, can I jump into that one? Because very rarely, I'm not one of these people who play that kind of weird ITK game in any way, shape, or form. But I did speak to somebody after Queen's Park who was very close to the board, etc., and they were very positive about Steven Gerrard. Back to your question, right? Steven Gerrard is available. He is well liked in the support. He had won something, and he's also a name in the States. So that would tie up, that would tie up a few threads there. And the reason he left Rangers was, he wanted to try his hand down south with that Iron Liverpool job, but also he wanted investment. It kind of comes together, some of that. So I don't want to walk past that point.
Yeah,
that's fair. Ross is telling me I've been done by a parody. I might well have done that, so I was trying to the
what I said was not from a parody. What I said was from a real person. So.
There are two names, but they will come up. Like, it's just natural, especially Gerrard. Like, everyone has that little golden moment of what Gerrard gave us. Kind of forget what else Gerrard gave us, obviously, at certain points. A few people wanted him sacked long before 55 happened. So, on the side of that, people put Beale as the brains behind Gerrard. So again, I don't assume Beale's coming back, obviously, but I don't think Gerrard. I don't think Gerrard on his own would be the answer in any sense. He needs coaches, it seems. So it's going to be one that comes up a lot. The Dyche one, I just hope we kill right now, because I can't watch that style of football. That's the big thing for me, this appointment. I don't care of the name; it's the style of play I need to see that's better, because I think that's how we get more domestic success. Anyway, I don't think the name is important. It's the style.
Really disappointed nobody in the chat had said roll out the red carpet when Fenerbahce come to town and see if we can poach their manager.
I've seen plenty of memes on Thursday, or is it Friday actually? Sorry, are people suggesting we should just steal Jose Mourinho from the away dressing room? And
I'd be all for that, to be honest with you. I think Mourinho's still got it. He's still got it.
Well, Philippe Clement doesn't like his style of play, so there we go.
Well, there we go. I'm sure Mourinho's up at night seeing how he can change his style of play.
Yeah, 100%. I think Matt Weir makes, not Matt Weir, sorry, where are we? There's too many comments coming in too quickly. Someone made a very good point around, it's Paul here, there we go. They get months to decide anyway. I would much rather they took their time and got it right than rushed into a decision. No matter who it is that they rushed into a decision with, I'd much rather they took the time. And you don't want to, in my opinion, you don't want to appoint someone just now. They get their bit of a new manager bounce between now and the end of the season.
Yes.
Which is useless, and then they start. They might start well, they might start not in the new season, but you're not getting that new manager freshness, I guess, when it gets to that stage, and that's a big thing for me. It's a big reason why I think we struggled with the previous managers as well, in terms of they're coming in halfway through a season, they're getting a bit of a bounce and doing well, and then struggling at the start of the next season. So 100%, I don't want that. On the Steven Gerrard bit, I like the thing that appeals to me about Steven Gerrard is his mentality and the way he can instill that mentality into a team, the way that he was able to make our team better than the individual parts that put it together. So I like that bit. I'm not convinced by his managerial style, to be honest. I think he was maybe found out a little bit at Aston Villa when he went down there. He took quite a long time to get up to speed at Rangers. I'm not sure I'd want that. He's going to want quite a significant chunk of change as well to spend, which and we all know that we need to clear out this side and go again from that. So I'm not convinced by Steven Gerrard. I think I'm on board with you, Ian, from a style of play thing around Sean Dyche. One name that our very own John Walker has thrown around is Russell Martin. More interesting, I think, from a style of play perspective, but his struggle.
Why so against it, Tommy? I'm kind of half and half with Russell Martin. If you ignore the Rangers career so far.
Yeah, I'm sure Russell Martin is a very, very good manager and a very good coach. I'm happy to admit that I cannot see past him playing in the Rangers jersey and what he served up to the stands. I cannot have that guy in the dressing room telling other players how to perform in a Rangers jersey. No.
Done well at Swansea. He's
good for him. Good for Swansea, not for Rangers.
Promoted. I reckon he could do a job for us.
Bear beats Swan. Simple as that. Right. Stick with the
one that Ross was trying to peddle in the press room yesterday was Jesse Marsh. He says ticks so many boxes with the new owners. American, worked with them at Leeds United, plays aggressive, attractive football through the RB Academy. Not a bad manager. I think it could be an interesting one as well. I do think that Ross just picked out because he's American, to be fair, and then he's retrofitted the rest of these reasons.
We all know that. Yeah,
he's not got the right to respond here, so it's a bit unfair of me to say that. But
between Jesse Marsh and Abraham Lincoln or something like that. No.
But one of the things, Tommy, that I was speaking to Ian before we came on here, but one of the things that I think is particularly interesting is the appointment of Issam Chirai as the assistant manager. When that happened, the fact we gave him a 3.5-year deal, so he signed a 3.5-year deal and was confirmed as assistant manager on the 29th of January. Now, apparently the talks around Takeover started well before Christmas, so that if that's already underway, and then they're giving someone a long-term 3.5-year deal as an assistant manager.
Sorry, I have to ask. People in the comments are now just absolutely trolling you. It has to be said. We've got Will Ferrell and Neil Lennon are the latest names in there. I'd take Will Ferrell, actually. Only if he did it as Ron Burgundy. Just constantly in the press conferences. I could live with that.
No, that's absolutely fine. Now, you've seen people sticking money on more ridiculous names than Will Ferrell, to be fair, as the betting opens for this. But back to the Issam Chirai point, Tommy, is if you try and look at it logically, then you say, well, surely he's just the interim manager. He becomes the interim manager, and then he becomes potentially part of the longer term solution, not as necessarily as manager, but as part of that, as part of the new structure. If you look at it non-logically, or probably how people view the Rangers board, they've just made a massive error by doing that, and they've just gone along with what they've been asked to do, and that's how it's ended up in this way. How do you view that?
Well, it's an odd one to give. I think it was a 3-year deal.
3.5, yeah.
3.5, thank you. 3.5 year deal to an assistant with a manager who's already under pressure. Maybe that goes back to the fact that we're looking to develop. I mean, obviously, we're looking at that North African segment anyway, as somewhere we should be looking at players as well. But yeah, it's a wee bit odd. You would think he would be the natural person to reach to, but he's only ever done, very, very small stints in terms of background analysis, etc., within the wider European game. Also, he's just in the door. Is it a little bit unfair to then turn to this new assistant manager and say, by the way, you're in the chair until the end of the season? I mean, I'm sure he would grab it with both hands. Nobody would turn down the opportunity, but especially if it's done in a way that he's kind of in a no-lose situation. You're going to be part of the club, part of the structure. You've been brought in long-term because we see you developing into a different type of coach or a future manager, and you can't really do any worse, but by and large. So, yeah, I mean, you would think it was a natural one and you put in guys round about him, a bit more experienced, but it just depends. Having just come in the door, can he deliver stability and a little bit of calmness to the dressing room? I hope he could, but I'm not entirely sure that would be the case. You might want to put in somebody who's just a little bit more experienced there to say, well, I'm only here to kind of keep the walls up until the end of the season, then I'll be away. And I think that probably works better.
Yeah. I've seen Kevin Thompson's name mentioned numerous times as well. He's just came in as part of the under-18 coaching team, and he's already been touted for a promotion temporarily to the first team. I don't know. I guess we're still waiting on the official announcement from Rangers around Philippe Clement being sacked. More and more news outlets are saying that he has been. So it's just a matter of time on that one.
Knowing Rangers media team and the fact that they enjoy this as Ibrox, they're waiting until we finish.
Okay, there we go.
And then as soon as we say goodbye, they'll stick it out.
There we go. Hey, we're not coming back, by the way, if that does happen. We're just assume that it's
We're not coming back. Somebody's going to clip that. We're not coming back. Full stop.
But let's talk about the wider piece of news I think that's been happening at Rangers this week. Let's talk about a bit more about the takeover discussion. 49ers Enterprises are rumoured to be interested, along with, I want to say, Andrew Kavanagh. Is that correct? In terms of leading the consortium to effectively purchase 51% of Rangers. There was a lot of discussion around, because 49ers Enterprise already own Leeds United, they could only own up to 29.9% of Rangers, I believe, for it to keep working. And that's where Andrew Kavanagh comes in and allows the consortium as a whole to own the 51%. Tommy, how much? I mean, it felt to me like it came out of the blue. It felt like we were all hoping and willing it into existence, but it felt like this one came out of the blue this week. Was it one that caught you by surprise?
The details of it, yeah. I mean, I think there's been rumours of investment round about the club for a while. What form and shape that was going to take. I think everybody's eyes were probably drawn. I know there was talk of Americans, but I think given some of the people on the board and the investors, people's eyes were drawn to Asia a little bit more than they were to continental US. And it is a consortium that's being led obviously from continental US. But yeah, I think Rangers and the teams involved have done a great job. You know what I mean? It didn't break cover until, like you said, just the other week. And you know, the expectation is if it's going to get done, it will get done in a number of weeks, single digit there. And so that's an incredible place to get to in terms of real interest in a story like that. Rangers need some sort of investment, right? It's whether it's done on a basis that everybody can be happy with, and you go in with your eyes open that there's a very different view of sporting franchises in the States than there is in the UK, and what commercialization looks like, and what people should be expected to do, and what the views of the fans are. But Rangers are in a place where we need a significant jump in income within FFP and all that type of stuff, and you can get some leverage that with a takeover to allow us to catch our rivals. Because right now, if you were to say, Rangers have got a war chest in the summer that's 15, 20 million, whatever, right? Well, our closest rivals have made 40 odd in the Champions League this season and are sitting with cash in the bank. So we need something that accelerates the plan. The problem that we've had since arguably 2012 is when we have had money, we've then wasted it, by and large, right? And that's the part that people are really interested in. Yeah, it's fine to be taken over. It's fine to see big, sexy headline numbers in terms of money available. It's getting the right guy in the dugout. It's getting the right players on the park. It's getting the right people behind the scenes to say, this is what the selection looks like. So as you're talking about all of that, you're talking about Clement out, Niels Coppin still in the door, whatever the new sporting director kind of roles will come together with the technical director. And what that looks like is more people going to the board. So there's a hell of a lot of change to come from that. But if it's done right, your club accelerates extremely, extremely quickly. And that can only be a good thing, because we cannot continue in the track that we're on right now that doesn't lead to anything closely resembling success.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I think we need to stick this make Rangers great again saying in the bin, though. I can't
100% in the bin.
100% in the bin, aye. Iain, what was your reaction to the Takeover news earlier in the week? It obviously came hot on the heels of Patrick Stewart's interview as well. What did you make of it all?
It's funny, we had absolutely nothing to talk about in the Wednesday podcast in the morning and realised we had too much to talk about the way things were going that Wednesday. So absolutely chaotic. Didn't have much chance to really look at numbers or details or anything. But like you guys are saying, the fact that they've spotted the problem at that 29.9% thing and have someone else to step up to make up the numbers, all that's agreed and locked in, it seems. That to get to that point just doesn't make sense to me in today's day and age. Like the secrecy of it, in a good way, that sounds negative. The good sense of like no one really knew it was happening until it's been pretty much 80% of the way there. Like that's phenomenal from the club and from the other side. So credit to that fully.
Is it reflective of Scottish football journalists though? Is the other question?
Says a lot, doesn't it? Yeah, it's nice. No, as Tommy said, we need this. I'm not expecting to start spending big suddenly, but the stadium needs a bit of work. There's possible expansion that could come of this, which then helps your FFP. And we've got a season ticket waiting list of 10, 15,000 you hear numbers of. Like, that's just wasted money sitting there. Again, not expect the guys to come in and just build a new stand for us kind of thing, but if they can come in with funds that start to bridge some of these gaps and make some of that difference up between our finances and Celtic's, it can only be a positive, because the investors and the board that's there just now have done a lot of good work for Rangers. Like, it has to be said, they've put in money and probably not so much return over the years. They've been not wasted their money, because I'm sure they've put in money where they've wanted to. And if we were as wealthy as those guys, we'd be doing the exact same, I'm sure, try to support Rangers. But yeah, it's quite a selfless thing, because you put this money in, you don't get much back, and you're not necessarily going to see a successful Rangers, and suddenly you get fans calling for the board to go and X, Y, Z. So it's quite a poison chalice in certain ways. So I think those investors have done their bit, and that's all well and good, and we thank them for that. But at this point, it now needs that fresh investment. It needs something new to come in. And let's be frank, the people who are buying us are very wealthy people, a very wealthy company, very successful company, and they're not new to this with the whole Leeds thing. Obviously, they've got the 49ers. That's long-term work they've put in to get to these positive steps. And you do look at Leeds just now, and Leeds are a massive club. They're flying just now. It's one thing Leeds doing well and Rangers doing well. I totally get that, but you can't help but kind of think, okay, that could be us. We could put these good foundations in, get a bit of financial backing behind us, and suddenly that gap's not what it is just now. And as Tommy says, the main thing will be obviously recruiting players, which these guys aren't going to come in and do that. They'll give you finances and funds, but we still have to get that part right, because it doesn't matter where the money comes from if you don't spend it properly. There's no point to it. So it's still going to be the key for me.
Yeah, I think. Sorry, Tommy.
I
think the interesting thing for me about it is that the worry is that whoever, if it's a huge investor or a huge consortium comes in, and then they don't care, they come in, they don't care about the club, they don't care about the history of the club, the heritage of the club, and they rip it apart, and they just make it what they want. I think from what I've seen that the 49ers enterprise have done at Leeds, they've actually embraced all of that, which is part of the thing that I've kind of looked a bit more into this week, and I like that part of it, and that gives me more encouragement around the way they're going to approach ourselves. But it's also going to be any thoughts that we're going to go into this summer and spend £100 million on the transfer window and stuff like that are just non-existent. It's going to be their short-term view will be 3 to 5 years, medium term will be 5 to 10, and then long-term is beyond that. So it's not going to be a quick turnaround in success. And maybe when we go back to the managerial perspective, you need someone that's going to build up a squad and a mentality gradually, and not someone that's going to need to come in and just overhaul everything instantly. So it'll be interesting from that perspective as well. Tommy, sorry, you were going to come in there.
No, I think that's good. Really good background in terms of Leeds, and I do believe that as well, that they've embraced the kind of local culture, if you like. I don't think we'll find ourselves in a position whereby, I think it was Cardiff had their badge changed, etc., to appeal to the Chinese continental market. But yeah, you just expect some level of difference. I don't think they're the Glazers or anything like that to work through that. But I've always felt that, particularly when Scotland had an automatic entry to the champions, automatically entering the Champions League, for European exposure, the Champions League's the place to be, obviously, right, for your brands and for advertising, etc., etc. For a relatively small amount of money compared to, obviously, the English Premier League, you can get access to the Champions League via Scotland. It's always been the thing. So if you're sitting there and you're saying, right, where do we want to spend our money? Well, the English Premiership has kind of done to death on that, because really, unless you've got an incredible amount of wealth within FFP, are you really going to topple Liverpool and Man City, etc.? Chelsea have got lots of money. There's lots of foreign investment in there. Look across north of the border, you can pick up players for a relatively small checkbook, and you could also be in Europe's Premier competition with all that exposure. That's some of the drive to that strategy as well. It makes total sense. But if I need to then come on this podcast and speak with an American accent, well, yeehaw, let's do it. It's as simple as...
Was that your attempt at an American accent, was it?
I was going to do a yeehaw, and then I thought, I've got a sore throat, and there's every chance that it would cut out halfway, and then I wouldn't win any blood that's there, right? So I will work on my American accent for next week. It may very well be deep south kind of American accent, but I will work on that, right?
There we go. Iain, one of the things that that I think attracts me about this as well is just how it elevates us. I think it elevates us from an appeal, from a sponsorship perspective. It just takes us into a whole new category of potential businesses coming to be partners of Rangers and that side of things. Obviously, the 49ers Enterprise will have their own relationships with major companies and all of that. But I think when you look at the level of businesses that have become commercial partners with, the level of businesses that we've been trying to maximise and bring in as part of the club to maximise the amount of money coming in from commercial revenue, it just elevates us completely. You see how Red Bull have went in and sponsored a championship team in England, for example. You look at the different examples of sponsors of the San Francisco 49ers who they'll have a relationship with. Doesn't mean that they're going to, those ones and those huge ones are going to come in here, but they'll have relationships with other brands in that sphere that may be interested in the UK market. How important will that be, especially in the world we live in around FFP and all that?
Yeah, it's massive. It's something that I think a lot of fans, probably myself included, don't really understand in terms of why a certain club can spend X amount and another can't. But it's all about your income. It's all about your sponsorship, and it's not just the income of getting fans in the door, because that's not a problem we're ever going to have. It's what you do sort of away from the pitch, and like you say, it's something that Bisgrove done really well here. Albeit he's got a lot of flaws and made a lot of bizarre decisions across his time here, but the amount of sponsorship he brought in would have been massive for us. Again, it's going to be one of those things that there might be some lines crossed with American ownership that we're not really comfortable with, whether it's like talking about stadium getting renamed and things like that. That could cause absolute chaos here. But if it brings in money and brings in big money, it's something I'd be all for, to be honest. Not the stadium.
Anyway, right, just on that one, Iain, if the stadium got renamed, I don't know, the Red Bull Arena, for example, we would all call it Ibrox. We would always refer to it as Ibrox. The name of this podcast would not change. What would... I'm just looking at Tommy to see his reaction there, but he's frozen, right? He hasn't frozen.
I'll tell you right now, I would heartily, I know the question's for Iain, right? So my apologies, Iain. I'll heartily embrace it.
Yeah. If you get an extra 10, 15, 20 million pounds a season, then...
Exactly. Nobody was up in arms when we changed the name of the training centre and all that. And I know Ibrox is always close to people's heart, right? As you say, it's situated in Ibrox, right? It's an area of the city. You're always going to be going to Ibrox, right? If somebody wants to slap another name on it for a couple of seasons, and as you say, that buys a couple of players, have at it. have at it. You know,
the best example for me is Barcelona play at the Nou Camp. We all call it the Nou Camp. You go and visit the Nou Camp. No one goes to visit the Spotify Nou Camp, yet they make hundreds upon millions every year.
I'm so glad you never called it the Camp Nou. There, I'm delighted for you there, Ian. Delighted for you.
That's nonsense. No, but that's a good example for me because Barcelona, biggest club in the world, probably, they're happy to do it. We can't be stuck up on this. And yeah, it would ruffle a few feathers. People would complain about it. But as you say, if it brings in money, if it helps us sign a few more players, you've got to take these opportunities. Because being in Scotland, we're not going to make money elsewhere, really. So I'd be all for it. Put different sponsors in the sleeves, put 10 sponsors here if they want. I don't care. It's something we really need to get better at, embrace.
Yeah, I did a podcast, Craig, you were on it, with Kieran Maguire when the accounts came out. And we were talking about this very thing. I think Karim Varane was still in the chair from a commercial director position at that point. But and Ian's touched on it there as well. You can see it in our books, right? Any Scottish club's books. The Scottish market has very limited appeal, right? It's only so big you can grow that. TV revenue, match day sponsorship, and I think match day income accounts for £1 in every £2. Somebody might correct me on that, but off the top of my head, £1 in every £2 that we make, right? So that's at a probably maximum level. Because if you inflate those prices even more and more, then you're looking at maybe foreign tourists coming into the stands because people can't always afford to go to games. Then you're looking at commercialization, marketing deals, and then you're looking at what Ian's talking about, that wider vista. But if you're in a position in Scotland and you want to be able to continually invest in your club and grow and grow and grow, you've got to be in the Champions League. You've got to be getting that appearance money. That's the level of success that then unlocks the next level of investment. And so whatever gets you to that point is how you start to become a sustainable club. And right now, Rangers are not a sustainable club because we're losing money. I think 17.2 in the last books or whatever. So that's it. Whatever gets us to that point, while keeping the club safe, is absolutely palatable. That's it.
Yeah. Ian, so we're 23rd of February today, season will end of May. We've got sort of 2.5, 3 months. Can't do quick maths there. To get 3 months to get to that to get to that point. What do we do as fans? Is it just a watch and see perspective, and actually what happens on the pitch now is immaterial because we're all paying attention to the movements and what's happening with regards to Takeover. We're looking ahead to who's our manager going to be in the summer. We do have a last 16 tie. Tommy mentioned the Fenerbahce game. To be honest, that's so far from my mind at the moment in terms of something that to look forward to, or I don't know whether it's a good thing or a bad thing that we've got that at this moment in time. But in terms of between now and the end of the season, as fans, what do we want? What do we do?
Yeah.
Is it just a watching brief?
I don't think it is, genuinely. If I even take away the European side of it, because that's obviously the kind of main game or games left at this point, obviously. I think from a domestic point of view, there's still a lot to trial in terms of players anyway, because we're saying we're not going to go out and spend 20, 30 million this summer. Like, we're going to have to retain a portion of this squad, whether we like it or not. And there's guys in there who might come good, might, go on a potential and get better. The big sort of best example for me is like Inciala yesterday, right? He was poor. The worst game he's had for us. But that's probably the one bad game he's had for us in the same sense. So I'd be quite keen to see him develop and not make those same mistakes again. And suddenly next season he's a viable squad option for us. Bailey Rice, another good example. He got hooked off at Queen's Park because he wasn't passing forward. Not sure how he was to blame for that, but that's another point. I want to see him in another few games. Can he pass forward? Can he try and dictate a game? Like, there's players in there who I want to see what they can do, maybe under new management, under new styles, this kind of thing, because there's going to be at least half the squad are still here next season, you would think. So I'd want to see these guys just continue, make their mistakes now, so at the start of next season, they're a bit more fine-polished kind of thing. Again, it's not exactly much to play for in terms of results, but as a Rangers fan, I'm not going to sit and accept drawing and losing games. So I still want to win every game. That's not going to go anywhere. I think Tommy touched on that in the pod last week, saying that the league's obviously done, but we still demand winning every week. So that's something that I think the club has to keep enforcing. So I try and stay away from the season's done kind of thing. But obviously, that Europe is the big thing. We need to be building towards Europe and this European fixture, because that tie is winnable for me. I know Fenerbahce have good players, but if you look at what they've done in Europe this season, they were the worst team that qualified statistically. They've lost quite a lot of games in there. Yes, you've got that Mourinho sort of star factor, but the team they've got, it's very experienced, very old. I think we could run over them if the players turn up and do what they seem to do in Europe. So big game to play for there. And that's what's kind of confused me about the last few results, is that the players have looked like they've chucked it, whereas surely we'd be like, okay, we've made errors, we've made mistakes, but let's dial in, let's get focused for this big game that's coming. But again, it's maybe just sort of hoping that seems to happen domestically, but I wouldn't say it's written off so far. Again, it's just about developing the younger players for me.
Tommy, same question to you. Where does it lie for you? Obviously, you probably expect some of the players now to feel like they're playing for their future if they weren't already. We saw players on the park like Tom Lawrence, who we know won't be at Rangers next year. Do you think it's just a bit of a change in approach, and actually it's becomes a testing ground for these players now in terms of showing what they can do?
I think the players that are in round about the squad, including the youth players, are round about the squad, so they should be playing. You know, mix in with that in the games. But the question here is, how many more injuries and embarrassments does this squad want to inflict on us between now and the end of the season? Where does their professional pride show up? Because it's easy to say, you know, I think by and large, any professional player would say players always look for excuses, right? Well, it must have been the manager's fault. Now we can have a bounce or whatever, right? Fine, but go out and win games. Now, people will rightly say, well, the pressure's off and all that type of stuff. Okay, but don't let the points gap get any bigger. Go and win the Old Firm games. Go and win everybody who comes to Ibrox. Go and put in performances. Show some professional pride. You know what I mean? Because no matter what style of play, nobody can ever kind of convince me that a manager sets up a team and that style of play makes a player lose their confidence on the ball or be scared to pass it forward.
Is there potential as fans actually for us to see, I don't know, a refreshed approach to the game, refreshed formation, refreshed all that sort of stuff, where Philippe Clement has potentially been a bit set in his ways in terms of the style he wants to play, the way he wants to set up the team, and actually this gives the opportunity for some freshness and for us to see the players in this team playing a different way?
Oh, I think that's a given. Yeah, I think that's axiomatic, if you like, in terms of the new manager's going to come in. Yeah, but a big word for it. Self-evident. Right, self-evident. There you go. I can tell I've got the daily calendar on my desk, and that's the word of the day that I've used it. There we are. I hope I said it correctly. And that, you know, any new manager, interim or not, is going to come in, want to do something successfully, and they'll have been looking at that style that Philippe Clement had set out and saying, well, that's clearly not been working against certain teams in certain environments. I want to try and put my stamp on something. If nothing else, they're in a no-lose situation, I think, because if they come in and they try a brand new formation and it doesn't work, they can revert, but at least the fan base will come with them and go, do you know what, they're brave enough to try something. So the first game or two, I think they're in a no-lose situation. Where at me, I'd definitely be trying something new. Right? The problem is, you're still relying on the same players. And these players have, and I've said it time and time again, their only consistent thing is they've been inconsistent and let us down. Right? Under different managers. You know, some of them are very young and deserve second chances. But somebody's going to have to get a tune out of these players, and that's been particularly hard. And I don't think that's all the manager's fault.
Yeah, I think that's fair. As of yet, still no official word from Rangers, but it's happened. It's done and dusted. Philippe Clement is going to be no longer the Rangers manager. Iain, can you just sum up, I guess we've spoken about a lot in this podcast, can you just sum up your overall feelings, I guess, at this moment in time, and I guess where your head is with it all?
That's a big question, that, isn't it? I really don't know. I think when I first heard the news they was sacked, I was deep down very happy. Like, I'm not going to deny it. It's sad seeing someone lose their job and all this kind of stuff. Of course it is. But we all knew Clement wasn't going to go anywhere in terms of, like, wasn't going to progress the players. And I actually think they were starting to regress a lot of the players individually. Like, we had a good purple patch with some guys, especially Raskin, Igaman, Jeff Day were looking really good. And we thought, okay, here's a few guys who are young, potential. We'll get a sell on for them in the future. This is good. The last few games for those three in particular have been really poor. And I'm not saying, again, this is not Clement's fault. This is not more bashing of Clement. This could be those individuals, but something had to change. And it's very cliche management. You're not going to sack a full squad of players. You're going to sack the manager and see what comes of it. I guess at this point, I've just got to try and be optimistic. Again, there's a hell of a lot of question marks at every level of the club right now. I think we do need, firstly, we need the announcement that he's sacked to kind of draw that line and move on. I think quite quickly we need to find out what the plan is, whether it is the Sherry, I'd probably say that wrong, but is he the one to step in? Is it Kevin Thompson coming up? Is it long term right now? Like, I need to know the plan straight away, because the question marks will just rumble on. We've got a game in 3 days time, so this doesn't mean a lot, but if things roll on and you get towards the European game and we still don't know, that's a shambles, because that game is really important for us. Whether we have confidence in it or not, that game means a lot. It's financially a big deal. So there's a lot to play for this season, albeit it's all European. We need some sort of stability, albeit we're not going to get at a board level for a good few months. I totally understand that, but at least the players need something, because once a new guy comes in, like you guys have just touched on, he might have a totally radical style of play that he wants to bring in. He might have a new formation, new style. The players have to be embedded to that as soon as, because they've been learning this 4-2-3-1 to death for 18 months now. Yes, it's not worked, but that's all they know. So if you look at someone like Jeffrey, for example, or Igaman, they've only played for Rangers with that formation and that style. So suddenly, I mean, if you saw how long it took Igaman to get up to speed with Scottish football or football, it seemed at times. So it's just something brand new, which might be great for him, might be great for the squad, but we're going to need to find out quickly how good it is, and you're going to need these games against your Kilmarnock, Motherwell before Fenerbahce to embed some new ideas for whoever's coming in. So overall, I'm positive that the change is happening. I'm a bit nervous for what happens next, but we've really got to just wait and see. And like I say, hopefully it's something we hear about sooner rather than later from all aspects of that.
Tommy, same question to yourself with the final word.
Back to the start of the podcast, Philippe Clement was trying to do something. There's some youth players in there. People could have got behind that project and the fact that he was trying to refresh the club alongside the board and the need for investment, and he changed the squad. Where he's fell short and what's ultimately cost him his job is the fact that even in transition, going and cutting the wage bill, we have a big enough wage bill and a good enough squad to have beaten the likes of Queen's Park and St Mirren, etc. He's not been able to satisfy that basic 101 stuff alongside these players, and therefore people couldn't get behind his wider tenure, and ultimately that's not good enough. Away he goes. With good feeling. I like the guy, spoken to him, really nice guy, wanted to do well for us. It's just ultimately not worked, and handshakes all round. Best of luck, Philippe.
That's something I should add. Like, it is sad to see him go, because like Tommy says, he seems a good guy. He seemed like someone who really did genuinely want to fix things. And I know that's quite an easy thing. He could have come out and said these words, but you properly felt that. Like, he wanted to be the guy who makes things good again, which, it's just could be buzzwords and things like that, but I really do feel like he had that mindset. It just never translated onto the pitch for a number of reasons. But
well, I would say having met him and spoken to him a couple of times, and I think everybody else who's been in the press conferences, etc., and whatever, I think that's spot on. He genuinely did want to nail it, and he really did buy into it. So I feel sorry for the guy in that respect, but ultimately, Rangers is bigger than one person, and we need to get success. And if somebody's not delivering that, no matter how nice they are, they need to go.
Yeah, I think so. I think we'll end the podcast there. Plenty more to come out in the wash in the next few days in terms of levels of compensation, for example. I've seen that question asked a few times in the comments, and in terms of what Ian picked up on there around strategy for the next, from here to the end of the season, and then the strategy beyond that as well. So there'll be lots of stuff to come, so make sure you stay tuned to the TII channels across social media, across YouTube as well, wherever you get your audio platforms. Make sure you don't miss out on any of the content, so please do subscribe, drop a like on the video if you enjoyed the content. Thank you very much everyone for listening and all your comments. Till next time, goodbye.